Woo! Hi guys, I'm back. Now, I want to ask a very simple question. What do you think shows the quality of a smartphone camera? Is it megapixels? Is it megapixels? Well, let's find out. If you were like me once upon a time, say 2 years ago, say even 3 years ago, I think that was late 2018 or so, I was in the hunt for my latest phone. I was looking for a new phone, and I came across a phone on the internet. That was like the first time I was ever seeing something like that sold as a mid-range phone. It was the Redmi Note 7, and it had a 48 megapixel camera. That was the first time I had seen anything that big. 48 megapixel, it blew my mind. And I was like, I have to get this phone, because all of the phones I had been using till then, they were usually, same mode, 8 megapixel, 12 megapixel, 13, 12, 13, 12, 13, 16 at most. And 48 megapixel was something out of this world. And so therefore I felt 48 megapixel, it's got to be good, right? Not exactly. I mean, the Redmi Note 7 was actually very good, in all honesty. It actually was very, very good. But that mindset or logic of rating phones by their megapixel count is actually quite misleading and not very helpful in the long run. Anytime, anywhere you go, any new phone you see now, companies are very quick to post the megapixel rating of their cameras. But cameras do not work alone with their megapixel ratings. Now, megapixel on its own is simply just a metric that tells you the resolution. That's the number of pixels, picture elements that the camera can capture. Now, capturing an image is one thing. Processing it is another thing entirely. Now, over the capture part of it, the megapixel count or the megapixel rating is not as important as you think it is. The importance of the megapixel rating is only for zooming in and out. So obviously a smartphone with a 48 megapixel camera is going to have a lot more zoom than a 12 megapixel iPhone, for example. iPhones can't really zoom that far because they use a 12 megapixel, but a phone with 64 megapixel or 108 megapixels is going to zoom even more because there are more picture elements. But that's just about it. What about the pixels used to capture the image itself? Because for photography, light is very important. I'm sitting in front of two very bright lights and there's one on top of my head. If these lights were gone, there would be no image, right? So the amount of light that the camera can capture is actually a lot more important. This is where pixel size and sensor size comes in. The pixel size and the sensor size is a lot more important than the megapixel count, because if enough light doesn't enter into the camera, your megapixels, if it can even be up to 500 megapixels, for example, it's not going to capture anything because not enough light is going to enter into the camera. See that? That's why you see Android phones, for example, with 48 megapixels would struggle to come close to touching a flagship iPhone 12, iPhone 13 with 12 megapixels. So megapixel count doesn't matter. The pixel size and the size of the sensor is actually a lot more important. Then another very important thing to also note is the SoC itself that is going to process the pictures. So capturing it is not, yes, it can capture it, that's quite fine, but what happens to the processing? Now, if you have a 64 megapixel camera, for example, that captures images quite alright at 64 megapixels, and then it sends it to an SoC. That's the SoC, the processor inside the phone, and the SoC inside the phone can only handle 25 megapixels. What do you think is going to happen to that 64 megapixels picture that was captured? the SoC is going to say, hey, I can't handle 64, downgrade to 25 megapixels. And then what happens is that the 64 megapixel at the back of the phone becomes useless. The SoC now is now going to start giving you pictures in 25 megapixels because that is what it can handle. Because I saw there was a time when a certain Nigerian company domiciled in Nigeria here released its first 64 megapixel phone on a Helio P35, and lots of people were arguing that yes, they have a 64 megapixel now and they have pictures that can rival anybody else's. Where do you start explaining to those people that Helio P35 is only going to output 25 megapixel shots? It's not going to give you the same quality as something that, you know, a Helio G90T with the same 64 megapixels would give out. And unfortunately, it's so sad that a lot of people are swayed by megapixel rating. Another I think the same company also I think they recently released their first 108 megapixel camera on top of a Helio G95 that can only handle 64 megapixels maximum. And I think most people who would buy that one now would think, yes, we finally got a 108 megapixel camera. No, you've not, right? So it's important to check these things. Do not be swayed by megapixel count. Whenever you see that a certain brand or a certain phone has a certain number of megapixels, I think you should dig deeper. If you dig deep enough, you'll find out that most of these companies would not even tell you who makes their sensors. They won't tell you if it was made by Galaxy Core, or if it was made by Sony, if it was made by Samsung, if it was made by Toshiba, if it was made by OmniVision. These are all the companies that make sensors for smartphones. You just see they're unknown, and then you know that I'm in trouble right now if you buy that kind of a phone. So if you check closer, they won't put the pixel size, they won't put the sensor size, they won't even tell you the SoC that is inside the phone that is supposed to be processing these things. So you got to understand that it is not just about megapixel count. It's if you follow this channel by now, you should know that. Don't just like, most of these companies are counting on you to remain ignorant of what megapixel counts are, so that you continue giving them your money. And that's what we are trying to stop here. You understand? Megapixel count, in the grand scheme of things, does not really matter as much as the pixel size, the sensor size, the name of the company making the sensor, and the technology that they are using. Is it ISOCELL Plus? Is it ISOCELL 1.0, 2.0, 3.0? Is it pure cell? Is it Sony CMOS? And then what processor is going to be in the background to be processing this image? That is what matters. And that is questions that you should be asking every time you see a phone with a big overblown number of megapixels. I guess that's a lot. That was a lot to think about, but I hope you really do think about this stuff. I hope you do. My name is Jeffrey, and see ya.